that is, the core functions of the state that minarchists and classical liberals who are relatively skeptical of state power think, oh, well, these are the things we need government to do. And first, I'm going to talk about the ideas of one of my favorite economists, James M. Buchanan, the founder of public choice theory, which is the application of economic analysis to the study of governments, political decisions, and non-market decision-making. Now, I think Buchanan was right about a lot of things, and you should all read him. But I think he was wrong to believe that if we only had government limited to a night watchman state, carrying out the limited functions of protecting individual rights through things like prisons, courts, police, war, the national security state, and possibly borders, although we could argue that immigration restrictions, and I would argue that immigration restrictions are in fact an infringement on individual rights rather than a protection. But these things are functions that some believe if only we limited the state to these core functions, we'd be fine. We'd have limited government. We wouldn't need to worry about individual liberty. I think there are some dead people who might beg to differ. Meet Ayanna Jones. Ayanna Jones was killed by police who were searching for a murder suspect. Now, searching for murder suspects is the sort of thing that we might want a coercive legal apparatus to do. It might be a good idea for us to seek out murderers, hold them accountable, and punish them. I'm inclined to think that's a good idea. But what I do not think is a good idea is having militarized police departments serve this function. When militarized police departments serve this function and knock down doors and throw disorienting flash grenades, they are likely to kill innocent people, sometimes innocent young African-American children. This is the result of several institutional factors, including the warfare state. As Chris Coyne and Abigail Hall document in their excellent research on the boomerang effect, foreign intervention tends to boomerang back, knocking down the liberties of citizens at home. Moreover, federal intervention and subsidies to local police departments tend to fuel this militarization. So while it is true that we need some set of institutions to resolve issues of murder, violence, and private predation by individuals, the institutional specifics matter. Because when we ignore the institutional specifics and allow those with centralized power to wield that power and to militarize their police forces, tragedies happen. Meet Khalif Browder. Khalif Browder was suspected of stealing a backpack. Theft is wrong. Theft is something that we might want a legal system to deal with. But what we don't want the legal system to do in response to theft is take an African-American man, lock him in Rikers Island for 3 years, torture him with solitary confinement, which you don't need to be a libertarian to recognize as torture. John McCain, that noted radical, recognizes that solitary confinement is torture. New York locked Khalif Browder in solitary confinement without trial because he could not pay bail. The institutional specifics of our criminal justice system matter, even if it's just a night watchman criminal justice system. Even if it's just enforcing laws against theft. The risk if we have bad institutions is that poor people will be tortured for 3 years without trial and kill themselves. What if we have due process? What if we go through trials and we mete out punishments the way the founding fathers intended? Well, we could still have some pretty serious errors. At least 300 innocent people have been convicted of crimes, and not victimless crimes that should not be illegal, like smoking or distributing marijuana, but serious crimes like murder, assault, and rape. They have been convicted of these crimes, and these convictions were wrongful. We know because we have DNA evidence exonerating them. And there are core institutional factors that fuel these wrongful convictions. These unjust convictions are fueled by such things as poor eyewitness testimony, as fraudulent forensic science, by forensic science labs that are paid per conviction and that work closely with police departments. Even good forensic scientists might have biases, because if you hear, oh, this guy committed murder and he committed sexual assault, if you're a good person, you're going to say, yeah, I want to help lock that person up. But you might be biased, and you might misinterpret science, because experts can fail. If you want to learn more about this, you should read the work of the excellent economist Roger Copland. Now that I have told you a bit about how the Nightwatchman state can run roughshod over the rights of individuals when it has bad institutional arrangements, and when it is attempting to protect them from predation at home, I will let my good friend Cory Massimino tell you about the disaster that can strike when the state attempts to protect us from predation abroad. Thank you.
My name's Cory. Can you hear me? Yeah. So war, what is it good for? Here's some good of trivia. Leo Tolstoy was originally going to call his book War and Peace. War was good for, and was later persuaded not to. That's a joke. So first we should define war. I think the best way to understand it is a mass conflict between groups of people via systematic campaigns of violence and terror. I think it pretty accurately describes what gets called war. War requires aggression, first of all. Given the weapons, tactics, scale of warfare, especially in the modern era, civilians are inevitably put in harm's way. To separate warfare from the inevitable and tragic innocent deaths it brings about is to portray kind of an unrealistic depiction of war, I think. I mean, you could say, what if those civilian casualties are merely a side effect of defending against an aggressor? And a lot of people do suggest that as a defense. You could say that the people perpetuating war don't mean to kill innocent civilians, that they die as an unintended consequence of war, simple collateral damage. But so what? The killer knew innocent deaths would be an intended consequence of their decision to pursue war with absolute certainty. They actively took steps that would result in the foreseen death of innocents. Even if their other ends were good, these are still known foreseen results. So for example, if I shoot at a crowd of 10 people because I think one of them, and even if my judgment is reasonable, that one of them is going to hurt or kill someone else, any innocent deaths among that crowd of 10 people, I'm still responsible for it, and I still have moral blame for it, even if I had it on a good end in mind. I caused those deaths in a real meaningful way. And so I don't think good intentions can justify ignoring known consequences. Because wanting nice things doesn't grant someone the license to pursue mass murder. And just as an example, the 20th century is particularly horrible for deaths associated with war. You can see war is basically a human killing machine, with 187 million deaths about related to war in the 20th century alone. And furthermore, wars are primarily fought by states, and states depend on force to raise funds in the form of taxation, and sometimes even to get soldiers in the form of draft. So it's an example of both evil means involving violence and violent evil ends. War makes everyone less safe. Institutions of violence escalate conflict, prompting ideological and emotional conflict between people of the warring regions. Every victory for one side is simply an incentive for the other side to pursue more violence. Neither region ever benefits from this, since even the attacking region lays the ideological foundations for its doom. Even so-called victorious attacks are merely temporary victories. They achieve a short-term loss, but create more hostility, hate, and eventually violence, and the attack stops. War is also the health of the state. States thrive on war. War has served as an excuse for some of the worst rights violations in American history. It has gone hand in hand with systematic degradation and destruction of both economic liberties and civil liberties, as well as increasing the size and scope of the government generally. If people believe they need protection from some terrible overseas enemy, that gives the government more leeway in pursuing even worse policies than it usually does, in the form of higher taxes, further spending, increased inflation, faster military expansion. The effects of militarization internationally have even spilled over to domestic police, as Nathan touched on. Government grows rapidly in times of war and other emergencies, but it rarely ever shrinks back down to the size that it supposedly claims that it will once the emergency is over. Some good examples of this, obviously the Alien Sedition Acts, the early history of our country. Lincoln and Wilson were known for suppressing speech in newspapers during their war efforts. The internment camps of FDR, the Patriot Act, and NSA spying recently, and even simple economic regulations like the income tax originated during the Civil War at first through Lincoln, and then through Wilson during World War, in 1913, finally, and we've had it since. War also has an incentive problem. Like any government program, the institutional factors leading up to it are likely to include conniving, evil, power-lusting parasites looking around for a handout from the loyal representative in Washington. It's kind of utopian, I think, to think regulators, bureaucrats, politicians, military leaders, and the like are benevolent public servants with the well-being of the people, even near the top of their value scales. They value, like a lot of people, money. And even if you come up with sort of ideal, defensive, unintended consequence-free war, the ability to implement that plan depends upon very real and very fallible human institutions. And human institutions, like the humans they consist of, are very prone to corruption, collusion, secrecy, and manipulation. Government officials are generally more likely to respond and cater to rent seekers and special interests, especially in war when the potential profits are so high. Even wars started with good intentions inevitably become manipulated by special interests, and turn into catastrophes. War also has a knowledge problem. People are not chess pieces. Society is not a chessboard. Each person has agency of their own, and our society is a complex, interwoven web of millions and millions of these individuals utilizing knowledge of their particular time and place to coordinate together on a large scale. The resulting order is not the result of any top-down plan, but of emergent, often tacit rules, norms, traditions. This social order is incredibly fragile and relies on a constant process of trial and error through time, because the knowledge embedded in these social institutions aren't available to any single person. This point originates as an argument, as many of you probably know, against the efficacy of socialist economic planning, which is why it is also perhaps the most devastating argument against the efficacy of military organizations to achieve their stated goals, since they are the epitome of socialism, authoritarian, centralized bureaucracies. Whether it be peacekeeping, democracy spreading, terrorism prevention, states and their armies are notoriously, systematically, inevitably ignorant of the very facts that peace and widespread social cooperation depend on. And they have no mechanism to judge success either. In fact, further mistakes and waste are often rewarded with more funding and calls for escalation to remedy the failures, ignoring the possibility that guns and weapons may not be the solution for every problem. And this leads me to my last slide, which I take from Brian Kaplan, the economist, who's also here this weekend. You should go see his debate later in his AMA in the exhibitor hall. And he demonstrates what he calls the common sense case for pacifism. And pacifism, understood this way, is the radical notion that before you kill innocent people, you should be reasonably sure that your actions will have very good consequences. And it's a fairly simple argument. The immediate, and this is taken directly from Brian Kaplan, this is not anything I came up with, this is something he persuaded me of. The immediate costs of war are clearly awful. Most wars lead to massive loss of life and wealth on at least one side. If you take a normal standard value of life, I don't really know where he gets this from, but $5 million, if you want to put that number on it, every 200,000 deaths is equal to $1 trillion of damage. So we know the immediate costs of war are just awful. Two, the long-term benefits of war are highly uncertain. Just like with a state trying to plan an economy, they lack the relevant knowledge. Some wars, most obviously the Napoleonic Wars and World War II, at least arguably deserve credit for decades of specific peace. But many other wars, like the French Revolution, World War I, they just sowed the seeds for new and greater horrors. You can say, fine, let's only fight wars with big long-run benefits. In practice, it's very difficult to predict a war's long-run consequences. Foreign policy experts are much more certain of their predictions than they have any right to be. So for any war to be morally justified, its longer benefits have to be substantially larger than its short-run costs. Brian Kaplan calls this the principle of mild deontology. Almost everyone thinks it's wrong to murder a random person whose organs save the lives of 5 other people, and take his organs to donate them to 5 other people, I should say. Almost everyone thinks that that's wrong, but when it comes to war, I think our moral calculus is a little off. For war to be morally justified then, based on that common sense situation, its ratio would have to exceed 5 to 1 in terms of innocent lives saved versus innocent lives lost. So what is it good for? Suffering, destruction, predation, violating rights, and destroying liberty. Very clearly, I think, it is associated with all of these things. I think libertarians have very solid reasons to be absolutists in their opposition to war and favor of peace. Thanks.
Good afternoon. Can you hear me fine? Mm-hmm. My name is Ruben, and today I'm gonna give a natural rights. Today I'm going to give a natural rights-based defense of liberalizing immigration restrictions, and I'm also going to talk about the communities in the U.S. who have had the border cross them. So most libertarians believe in some variation of natural rights, whether we have our rights because they're God-given or because we discover them through reason. The important takeaway is that we have rights because we're human. Our rights don't exist because of government. Instead, governments exist to protect our rights. And with that said, someone born on the other side of an arbitrary line has just as many rights as anybody else. To restrict immigration is to infringe upon the rights of the immigrant who wants to self-determine their own destiny. It's also abridging the rights of Americans who would like to contract with this immigrant or otherwise associate with them. Immigrants are both laborers and entrepreneurs, so if you believe in the free flow of goods and services, then it would be philosophically consistent to also support border restrictions. So there's at least two things that are really important to understand about our immigration system today. Number one, immigration is not the forced movement of people. People immigrate here because oftentimes they're escaping poverty or various forms of oppression. People come here because they want to improve the course of their life and because they think, or because I think it's pretty obvious, they come here because our institutions are better than the ones that they flee. So the second thing to know about immigration is that there is currently no legal way for a low-skilled, undocumented immigrant to come to this country legally. Unless they have a family, you just can't do it. So people often say, well, perhaps these immigrants should get to the back of the line and come in, like everybody else did. But there is no line to get into the back of. And so Alex Nightwatchman, who's one of my mentors, who's a scholar at the Cato Institute, he often says, if we want people to respect the law has to be respectable. And if you don't like illegal immigration, then let's liberalize our immigration system and allow more legal immigration. It's pretty simple. To put it simply though, freer immigration is a necessary component of the free market. If you value natural rights, if you value free people and free markets, then liberalizing immigration is a must. So one issue that gets lost when we talk about immigration is the notion that the United States antagonized the war with Mexico and then bought half of its territory. And so roughly 1% of Mexico's population they lived in what is today considered the American Southwest. Most of these old Chicano communities did not cross the border. The border literally crossed them. And their norms and their traditions are more closely related to American Indians in the region than they are their Spanish ancestors, or even, kind of normie Americans nowadays. So, it's true that some of these Chicano communities predate the United States. And it goes without saying that a lot of these communities have a very strong, pretty much a spiritual connection to the Southwest because their Spanish conquistador ancestors conquered it. So they, have an affinity towards it. And there's this deep socio-cultural connection to the American Southwest that predates statehood, and in many ways it even predates modern Western tradition, or modern Western ag tradition. So one stark example to me that illustrates the legacy of aggression that occurred in the Southwest is the breaking up of the Camino Real. The Camino Real is known for being a Spanish route into the mainland of the continent. It extends from modern-day Mexico City all the way past Santa Fe. And it got its name from the Spanish, who transformed it from an indigenous path into a natural road, and they were able to bring their wagons and their horses upon it. And as I mentioned, though, this road is, long before the Spanish arrived, it was an indigenous route. And scholars can trace these petroglyphs all up and down the Camino Real that indicate that these people have been using this path since at least the 1300s. But there's some evidence that it's much, much longer than that. And so the Aboriginal or the indigenous Camino Real used to go all the way from Mexico City, all the way to the Black Hills in South Dakota. So it was a pretty phenomenal trade route. And it's perhaps the oldest trade route in North America. And now, guess what? It's broken up by the US border. So border restrictions are an affront to the rights of the indigenous people of North America. As a matter of fact, American Indian communities in the Southwest have become ground zero for immigration enforcement. There are currently 29 tribes that live on the border and who are impacted by the US crazy immigration policy. The one that's most notable is the Tohono O'odham Nation. They're in Arizona. And the Border Patrol is the nation's largest law enforcement agency. But on the Tohono O'odham Reservation, it more closely related to a foreign occupation. Imagine 24-hour surveillance, high-powered floodlights, infrared cameras, drones, Apache helicopters, and this is on your Aboriginal land, and people are now doing that to you. And so one 2012 report from Amnesty International, it detailed some of the abuses that the Tohono O'odham are subjected to. They're subjected to harassment, intimidation, frequent verbal and physical abuse at the hands of border agents. Oftentimes, tribal members on their own reservation are stopped, searched, and if they can't prove that they're part of the tribe, they'll be deported or returned to the other side of the border. And that's on their own land. And I haven't even mentioned the fence. There's already a fence there, right? And it's an old, rusty, ugly fence that splits up the reservation. And they're supposed to be allowed the right to travel across their territorial boundaries without having to deal with like the border patrol. They have this thing called Aboriginal title, which allows them to move across the border without having like the documentation. But that doesn't happen. And the existing fence already intrudes on their sacred spaces. And I don't even want to imagine what a big, huge wall, what kind of impact would that have on their society? Not good. And so, as Eileen Firebach says, she's a policy analyst that deals with American Indian issues, she says that border enforcement on tribal lands is an assault on indigenous sovereignty, as well as an assault on the cultural integrity of Native societies. Border enforcement runs roughshod over the rights of countless people. If we truly believe in individual liberty and limited government, then we need to free up our immigration system and make sure that injustices like this don't continue to happen. Thank you.
So we can take some questions, I guess. Got a few minutes.